Ben was really good in being able to identify what his requirements were. And they did change a little bit through the process. So having a customer that sort of understands what they're trying to do is useful. Things changed afterwards, Ben, as well, right? So when the acquisition was made, there were other things that sometimes we wouldn't have thought about as part of that initial engagement. So it's understanding what your requirements are today, but then also thinking what the medium long term looks like.
Hi, and welcome back to the show. We like to get a customer perspective on the show. And this week we have Ben from SmartSearch. He takes us through his personal journey in telephony through to Skype and then Teams. And also at SmartSearch, how they went about choosing a recording vendor, why they chose Numonix, and also some interesting stuff they're doing with API integration with Numonix. Thanks to Ben for jumping on the show. And also many thanks to Numonix for all their support of the community. On with the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. We like to have a customer point of view on the show as much as possible, and excited to get a point of view from Ben, who's been in the industry for quite a long while. So we're going to talk about his history. And we also got Andy from Numonix, who are part of Ben's recent story. So we'll talk about that as well. Ben, maybe you could introduce yourself first of all.
Hi, my name's Ben Richardson. I'm an infrastructure engineer at SmartSearch. I've got around about 28 years previous experience in the industry. Started off life as a telecoms engineer, moving to a VoIP engineer. And around about COVID time, I decided to retrain and moved into the sort of the traditional infrastructure role. And actually, I did an advanced apprenticeship and did a level 4 networking course, which was really good to get some accreditations on paper, if you like. And I've been at SmartSearch for about 3 years.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm interested to dig into that because you've gone from the proper voice world into the UC and collab world, and that networking part is definitely part of that puzzle. Andy, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, Andy Whiteside. I'm the VP of Sales for Numonix. Relatively short in my tenure here, but worked in the channel, probably in lots of the environments that Ben's talking about on the voice side from years ago. But did a stint with a contact center provider out of Europe for 6 years prior to this. But Mike Levy and I knew each other and threatened to work together at one point, and that's where we are today.
Awesome. So Ben, why don't you start off, give us an overview of SmartSearch to give us some context of the organisation.
Yeah, so we've around about 200 staff members. We are an anti-money laundering and compliance platform seller. So we sell our SaaS solution to customers who need to do anti-money laundering and identity checks on people. We've recently just acquired another business called Credas, who do a very similar thing to us, but predominantly work in the property sector. They're based in Cardiff, and that was a result of an investment by a private equity firm called Triple, who acquired us approximately 2 years ago. And their aim is to grow us and make us 100 million companies. Their target, they tell us. So big aspirations then. Yeah, and it's an interesting journey. It's interesting to sort of be part of. Yeah, so that's us in a nutshell.
Awesome. And talk how long have you been there, and kind of what was your history pre and post? Did you go on this telephony journey all with them, or have you been in other organisations?
No. So I joined them as a senior service desk engineer. So I was working with the everyday faults, and like I said, did this apprenticeship and then got a promotion to the infrastructure team. But that was heavily backed with my knowledge around VoIP. And it turns out actually the technologies are very, very similar. So I was always working with client applications in the VoIP world. So that sort of transition into the traditional infrastructure role was quite an easy thing to do, but I've really enjoyed it. And previous to SmartSearch, I was working at another company called Civica in a very similar role to that. So, yeah.
Nice. And at what point did you get exposed to Skype for Business, Link, and Teams?
Oh, right. So, I've in my telecoms role, we were 15 years ago, 10, 15 years ago, still using Skype and then Teams. But that was the addition of direct routing to me was a massive game changer. Whereas with a traditional PBX VoIP system, to license a user for a video call was quite an expensive license. And Teams just changed the game with that. And I could see a potential death of a large part of the industry I was working in. So that was a big driver for me to sort of do that retrain. Yeah.
That's awesome. And like, so you felt early, you could see the telecom space was changing and it was going more to UC and collaboration.
Absolutely. And I mean, software as a solution wasn't really a thing at that point. Azure was new, AWS was new, but I could see the direction that things were going and thought I needed to do something about it, and I did.
Nice. And you had I guess first of all, it'd be good to talk through. Are you 100% Teams now at SmartSearch, and do you use Teams for do you have contact center? Obviously, you have Numonix for recording, which we'll talk about. Is it direct routing? Is it OC? What does that look like?
Yeah, so it's direct routing with, we have 2 SBCs in Azure that we manage, a HA pair. And we use Teams for everything. So we don't have the sort of the contact center element as such. We do have inbound IVRs with call queues and longest agent routing. We use Power BI for some of the reporting metrics, and we've got the advanced license for some of the team managers so they can opt agents in and out of calls, etc. So yeah, we use as much of Teams as we can, and it's that direct routing element that I referenced before that's the sort of the game changer for us.
That's awesome. And it's interesting to hear organizations that are, as you say, using what's in the box. The call queues and the queues app have got a bit more advanced now. So you can get quite a long way these days with what's in the box for basic kind of queuing and IVRs and routing.
Yeah, that's true. And the feature sets are always evolving. It's not I don't think we could use it in a true contact center element where there are really sort of in-depth reports needed, but for a business our size, it covers 99% of our needs. We don't need any specialist equipment, but I think again, if we did need specialists, you can have bolt-ons with the Microsoft Dynamics bolt-ons for contact center and things like that. So yeah.
And what took you to needing recording? Was it more compliance or more data insights, or a bit of both?
It was a bit of both, and we already had a product that was legacy. It was approaching end of support. It was not very user friendly, so the quality analysts had quite a hard job identifying calls and listening to calls and gathering data. And we also had the requirement to integrate with a third-party application for our sales team that scores the quality of their calls based on set criteria that we program. And it was really important that the solution that we chose had that ability. And more importantly than anything, we needed an accredited Microsoft third-party for the compliance side of things, just so we were in support, and we could have a company that we could trust, essentially.
No, that makes sense. It's interesting to hear the different sub requirements there, because when we think about Teams recording, like a lot of minds usually jump straight towards like we're a company, we need recording for compliance purposes, but actually you had like usability considerations there around the people looking into the data and the reporting and those cool insights. And what was the third party that you wanted to integrate with?
So they're called Attention. It's Attention AI essentially, and it's a really sort of accurate analysis of the transcription of the calls and the scoring, and it's created with the ability to integrate Numonix into that. It's created a real sort of drive for the sales team, and we're seeing some real key turnaround and some revenue sort of come back from that investment, which is always nice, obviously. And again, Numonix is the back end, and it was key to have that integration working and stable.
Yeah, we'll talk about how you did that in a second, because it's really interesting, because you essentially did it yourselves with the Numonix API. But Andy, I want to throw to you, how, like, on that kind of what the market's looking for, how much is the split to like classic compliance versus insights, integrations, new ways of working?
I think if you'd asked me that about a year or so ago, it would be compliance, and that would have been the driver for most of the customer requirements in that space. I think when Ben and I first talked, we first had an initial discovery, we weren't sure whether that would be our TRaaS platform or our IX Cloud, and actually they had a mix of users that meant that IX Cloud was probably the best option for them. So yeah, I think we're seeing lots more drivers that are trying to get that data insight from those recorded calls and do something clever with it. The compliance stuff will always be there, but they tend to be, unless you do something really bad, they want to keep those in place because they're risky and complex. So it's a lot of the new discussions we're having around getting insights from those conversations.
And Ben, how did you find assessing the market and the market options? Because it's interesting because you had both those requirements. Like, how did you go about understanding what your options were? Did you do any kind of proof of concepts? Like, how was all that experience?
Yes, we did. So we had many workshops sent out, quite lengthy, that Andy will be able to testify to, documentation, RFIs, security questionnaires. That was another sort of criteria, actually. ISO 27001, SOC 2. And yeah, we just set up demonstrations with companies, and we saw what was on offer, predominantly from that third-party accredited Microsoft list, and we just worked through those vendors. A couple I'd worked with before, and yeah, we chose Numonix as the primary sort of place to go to based on that discovery.
And that list, that's a great explanation. That list is usually everybody's like, well, first off, they've got to be Microsoft certified or a Microsoft shop. But that's quite a long list there. Then you're breaking it down into requirements. Like at the end of that process, why did Numonix stand out above another?
It was the simplicity of the solution. It was the fact that we could do the integration with the API ourselves. And it was just an overall experience we got, or we had rather, from Andy and the technical team, just really sort of clear explanations, really good if we had another query, because we'd canvass one team at work and then another team would want to get involved. So there was constantly evolving requirements. And just Numonix were the best at responding, and it was overall the best fit for us.
Nice. And how was it deploying and going live? Because you've done classic voice recording, and like in the PBX world, you've done some stuff with Skype. Like, how hard was it? What kind of time frame to get to live with Numonix?
Well, I'd booked out probably an 8-hour session to do it, and the actual initial configuration and hookup was done in about 20 minutes. It was 5 PowerShell commands, just really simple, with it being a bot, their bot that we connect to. It was unbelievably simple compared to hooking up contact recorders to, going back a few years, ISDN 30 lines and having boxes of tin on site and large CapEx expenses. Obviously, all that moved to an OpEx, and yeah, it was just really simple on setup, really simple.
Yeah, it's quite a different world to the olden days of recording with, like you say, networking and port mirroring and SIP-rec or ISDN repeaters. That's good to hear. And talk us through the API thing's really interesting, because different recording platforms offer different native integrations, and some offer APIs, some gate their APIs a little bit. But it sounds like you guys just took actual Numonix standard API they provide to the customers, and you ran with it and did the integration with that third party directly.
That's correct. So yeah, we got the Open API documentation from Andy and Co. And we had to then set up some parameters. So we had to set up a requirement. We didn't want calls under, let's say, 1 minute and 30 seconds because we didn't think they would be relevant or have any valid data. We wanted to only get calls of a certain age, and we had to just run the development with the attention team, and their developers were really good. So it took 2 or 3 iterations to get it accurate and right, but now we seem to be, we can get a call as soon as an agent has finished. The call is appearing within attention in 2 minutes, which isn't bad, really.
And Attention's one of those like sales insights platforms. So it's taking the calls, scraping for insights and sentiment, and helping you understand kind of insights and next actions. Have I got that right?
Absolutely, yes. So there are scorecards that our sales managers set criteria on. So they say it's all done via AI agents, actually. So they will say, I want my sales agent to mention A, B, C, D, and E about SmartSearch when on a call. Has that agent done that? And the attention platform will scrape that transcript and score the call based on that, and then automate an email reply. It will then update the HubSpot CRM package with the details of the call via another API. So yeah, it's quite a good platform.
That's the gold, getting it into the CRM. Like, it's a nightmare getting salespeople who, Andy, will give the benefit of the doubt, are very busy and have lots to do to put the notes into the CRM. So anything that can automate that is gold.
Absolutely.
Andy, talk us through. You mentioned TRaaS and Xcloud. Like, explain those two for the community, and what's the difference as far as API and integrations go?
So our end-to-end solution is Xcloud. That's the solution that Ben's got, and that comes with an open API for customers to use. TRaaS is more Teams recording as a service. So effectively, that just uses a bot service. So people like Attention and Gong and Navini and those sorts of guys want to just capture the call. And then we can deliver the call with the metadata into a folder that they go and do something better, something different.
Yeah, we've had Gong on the podcast actually talking about their integration, which uses your underlying infrastructure, and that they present that to their customers as part of their product. They're gathering the data. There's no Numonix interface. It's just you're a kind of integration layer on that scenario.
And I think that's the point, right? So I think we don't want to be an AI company. Will we bring, AI services that customers can be prepackaged and used? Of course, that's what everybody's going to do. But ultimately, we want to do what we do well, and we want to make it as easy as possible for customers to consume that service. So, some organisations have got really, skilled back office guys that can say, "Hey, we want to take this." Call, we want to do this with it, we want to connect to these other systems, and we want to have a result that is this, and the API will allow you to do a lot of that. We also then will have sort of the middle ground where they might want to take our transcription because that's just easier to bolt those two things together, but they might have a specific requirement to go and do fraud detection on an insurance call that might need a slightly different tooling set to be able to go and interrogate that and give them exactly what they want. So it's the combination for me is if I can make it really easy for customers to consume it in one of those or a combination of those methods, then typically the TRaaS stuff won't consider the compliant storage because it's going to go into another system that maybe it's just using a transcript and then it's going to do something over the top of it. So there's combinations of all of those different things and tooling that customers might have. So yeah, in a nutshell, we've got pretty much any way that you want to be able to consume whatever we can provide.
And on the Xcloud, have you seen an uptick in interest and conversations about the API? I feel like AI has unlocked a lot of conversations where things you wouldn't, like organizations wouldn't have done in-house before, but now they're like, oh, actually, it's not as hard as it used to be because we can use Codex or Claude Code or do some of these integrations or Power Apps and Power Platform to pull these things out. Am I right? Have you seen like a reflection, like people are interested now in that API access to the data?
100%. I think, and sometimes we don't even know what customers are doing because they're using the API documentation. They're going off and doing their own builds. They're bringing whatever they need into those platforms. And so we've changed a few things. Making API calls. We've tried to streamline that a little bit with using webhooks and those types of things. We've got support for things like private endpoints now. So all of those things that will help, maintain a secure environment for people to pull that data from. But yeah, without a shadow of a doubt, we've just launched some AI on demand features, and customers that maybe have been looking at AI in different contexts now can go, oh, hang on a second, the source of this data is the conversation, and that's a meeting or a call. We can then, on demand or on every call, get a subset of different AI tools just to help them in their day-to-day. And that's really, where we're seeing most of the conversations today.
Nice. And Ben, I like the integration is really cool, so definitely want to talk about that. But you mentioned at the start of the conversation the people using the reporting and the insights on the Numonix usability side. Yeah. Talk us through that. That seems to have been one of the drivers you talked about on the prep call. Is the other products you're using didn't have the best reporting, and there was some friction there. Has that changed?
Yeah, 100%. The user interface of the IX Cloud platform is really user friendly. The QA team can now search for users by group, or they can search for the user directly by the name. They can then go into that call and just see an overview of the call. They can drill down into it. They can extract a certain section of the audio. It's all presented in a waveform. They can share that with people. They can password protect that share. So it's really enhanced the efficiency of that department. Essentially, they can export to Excel the call listings. And just one other really interesting thing that I forgot to mention. One of the other requirements that we had was that the data had to be in preferably a UK data center, but we wanted to bring our own storage if we could. And Numonix were unique in that fact, where we are using our own Azure storage that's hooked into their platform. Which obviously allows us much greater control, and that passed the InfoSec committee sort of with flying colours. So I thought that's a really important thing to point out.
Yeah, that's a good point. And even because you have quite stringent InfoSec and SOC 2 and ISO, those kinds, so they were comfortable with Numonix are recording, but then it's coming back into our infrastructure for the data storage.
Indeed, yeah, and it's all encrypted. It's encrypted in transit, and obviously now it's encrypted at rest as well.
Yeah.
And I think correct me if I'm wrong, do you provide a terabyte of storage, Andy, as default anyway, if we just selected your storage? But yeah.
Yeah, normally when we create a tenant, then it's got a terabyte of geo-redundant storage. But typically customers will make a decision at the start of the process to say whether they want to use their own or whether they want to use ours. And we can mirror the Azure regions for where customers might sit and where they want the recordings to reside if they do use our storage.
Yeah, it's a nice option to be able to use your own, because you can pick your geo, pick your level of redundancy, pick your level of replication, because it's your data at that point, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think we've had we probably over-egg it in terms of but we never know what a customer's requirement's going to be. So the geo-redundant storage for some is probably a little bit overkill, but we would much rather have at least some replication of that data outside of the geo location. So
yeah. So Ben, great to hear that journey story and kind of some insight to why you chose. There'll be companies listening to this who are in the process of evaluating what they're going to do around recording and compliance, typically, obviously listening to our pod, probably in the Teams realm. Now you've been through the journey, you've gone live, you've done the integrations. What would you say they should do to assess the market options, to pick the right player? You've been through the whole process now, so I guess some insights into how to assess and choose the right solution.
Yeah, I think it's important to understand what the key requirements are across the business. It was the previous solution that we had was the decision was made by an IT manager, and it was a recording solution, and it didn't actually fit probably 50% of the department's requirements. So I think get your department heads into a meeting, decide what the key requirements are, and just go out to vendors with an RFI, with a clear sort of guidance. This is what we want. Show us that you can do that. And I would always try and say, pick the simplest solution. Things don't need to be complicated. Yeah.
That's really useful. Yeah, that time invested spending time with the business is so important, because if it's just IT operating in a vacuum, you're bound to find someone later puts their hand up and says, well, I assumed we could bring this into our sales enablement platform, or I thought obviously recording means that we keep the data in country or whatever it may be, but you've missed that requirement.
Yeah, true. And I think that sort of there's some obvious ones that maybe aren't obvious to everybody. The SOC 2 compliance, the accreditation of being a Microsoft partner, really important, I think. Mm-hmm. Or if you're not using Microsoft, whatever platform you are using, and just make sure that you do that sort of that verification and background checking to make sure you're not dealing with somebody in a garden shed. You know, does happen.
Yeah. You can have some very impressive websites and marketing, and then you do your certification checks and your credit checks, and it can tell a different story. So that's interesting. Andy, I guess same question to you. Obviously, you're going to fly the Numonix flag, right? But you've got a lot of industry experience. Like, if you had the chance to say to a customer, like, here's the 3, 4, 5 things you should ask, check, get in writing, consider, what would you say?
Yeah, look, I think the first thing, and especially in the Teams world, is to make sure you're dealing with a certified provider. You know, that gives you lots of assurances. I think, you know, there are lots of options out there these days, and I think you can you could think you're going down a route where you've got the right level of support, but there's a lot goes behind it in terms of making sure we've got the right relationships with Microsoft, and we can get the support, and more importantly, customers can get the support from them when you've got other systems connected to that Teams world. So
I would go a little bit further and say that is a great shortlist, but of that list, we know there's some providers that are more engaged with Microsoft than others. We get to talk to Microsoft very regularly. Like, it's a big job keeping up with Microsoft's APIs, Microsoft movement. So make sure that vendor is, you know, it's not just a feature tick, but like they have lots of customers on it. Like it's one of their big integrations, not it's a feature tick box.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, we've been through that process in lots of different scenarios. I think the latest sort of change for us was the conference mode release, which we worked very closely with, and we were the first to bring that to market. So I think, and some of those changes will be service affecting if you don't get those things right. And again, if you're in a regulated environment, you know, that's a risk you probably don't want to take. I think Ben was really good in being able to identify what his requirements were, and they did change a little bit through the process. So having, you know, a customer that sort of understands what they're trying to do is useful. Things changed afterwards, Ben, as well, right? So when the acquisition was made, there were other things that sometimes we wouldn't have thought about as part of that initial engagement. So it's understanding what your requirements are today, but then also thinking what the medium long term looks like. And I'm glad to say that we were able to accommodate those new users, and I think that's a thing that, you know, just makes the relationship feel better when you don't have to then go and ask for a load more money, other than, you know, maybe some extra users at this point. I think the SOC 2 thing for me is important. There's a handful of recording providers that have it. From a purely selfish perspective, and in the sales role, I've had lots of situations where we have security questionnaires with hundreds of security questions on it. I can almost, you know, eliminate that process by getting an NDA signed and sharing what somebody else has has verified for us. So, I think that from my perspective really helps the sales process and helps customers feel that we understand the importance of this and how seriously we take it.
Awesome. Well, listen, thanks so much, guys, for taking time. Ben, really appreciate you being so open about the process and what you guys have achieved, and awesome to hear someone taking APIs and doing that integration between the platforms themselves with the vendors. That's really cool to hear.
Cool, thank you.
And Andy, thanks for joining us. Appreciate your insights as well.
Always.
And
thank you.
We'll all talk again soon.
Thanks for having us. Thanks, Tom. Thanks.
Cheers.
Ben.
Thank you.